Imagine a world where stealing is acceptable if it's to feed a starving child, where lying is praised because it saved lives, where war is justified because it brings peace. Sounds conflicting? That's the power and peril of the phrase, "The ends justify the means." This provocative idea has shaped revolutions, justified atrocities, and driven social progress. But is it a necessary realism or a dangerous descent into moral chaos? Let's unpack this together. Welcome to the Unfolding Journey YouTube channel. If you're new here, this channel dives deep into the philosophies, histories, and untold perspectives that shape our world. We don't just ask questions, we challenge assumptions. So grab a coffee or take a walk, because this one's going to stretch your mind. At its core, the phrase, "the ends justify the means," suggests that the morality of an action depends solely on its outcome. If the goal is noble enough, peace, freedom, safety, then the methods used to get there, however brutal or deceptive, are considered acceptable. This idea is most commonly associated with Niccolò Machiavelli, the 16th century political philosopher whose work The Prince is often cited, and often misunderstood, as advocating ruthless pragmatism. But Machiavelli didn't invent the idea, he just stripped it of its polite packaging. Versions of this philosophy can be found across cultures and centuries, from ancient Chinese strategy in Sun Tzu's Art of War to modern-day political campaigns and corporate tactics. Let's play devil's advocate. Sometimes the stakes are too high to play by the rules. Consider World War II. The Allied forces bombed cities, used propaganda, and formed secret alliances, all in the name of defeating Hitler. Were those means justifiable, given the end goal of stopping a genocidal regime? The American Civil Rights Movement. While largely peaceful, it involved civil disobedience, technically illegal actions. But the ends? Desegregation and a step toward equality. Whistleblowers like Edward Snowden broke laws to expose government surveillance. Treason to some, heroism to others. In these cases, people argue that strict moral purity might have cost lives or delayed justice. Life, they say, isn't lived in black and white, it's lived in gray. This viewpoint holds that in a complex world, results matter. If bending the rules prevents greater harm, then isn't that the moral thing to do? Enter utilitarianism, a moral theory by philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Utilitarianism argues that the right action is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number. Sound familiar? This philosophy is the ethical backbone of "the ends justify the means." It shifts the moral lens from intent to impact. For example, if torturing one person could stop a terrorist attack and save hundreds, utilitarian logic says yes. If lying could prevent a war, go ahead. Utilitarianism forces us to consider outcomes, not just rules. But this is also where things get tricky. Here's where it gets dangerous. If we always justify the means by the ends, we create a loophole for any behavior, as long as the goal is desirable. History offers haunting examples. The Inquisition, torture and execution to save souls. The Soviet Union under Stalin, millions died for the promise of a classless society. Terrorism, often justified by perpetrators as necessary for political or religious goals. If morality becomes flexible based on results, then who decides what ends are noble enough? This thinking can lead to moral relativism, where right and wrong shift with context. Loss of accountability, because bad actions can be retroactively justified. Exploitation, where powerful people manipulate outcomes to excuse unethical behavior. When we let ends justify means without limits, we risk becoming what we claim to oppose. So how do we balance this? Philosopher Immanuel Kant believed that actions must be judged by their intent and their adherence to moral duty, not just results. He argued, act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Translation? Don't do something you wouldn't want everyone else doing. If lying, killing, or cheating becomes okay just because it works, then we erode the very fabric of trust and justice. Kant reminds us that morality isn't about success, it's about principle. Let's get real. Here are some modern dilemmas that reflect this debate. AI development. Should governments lie or withhold information to stay ahead in the race for technological dominance? Vaccine trials. Is it okay to test drugs in poorer countries if it might save millions globally? Media manipulation. If spinning a story keeps the public calm, is it ethical? Education policy. If grade inflation boosts student morale, does it justify compromising academic standards? In each case, the question boils down to, do we value results or integrity? Maybe the real answer isn't black or white, but somewhere in the middle. Here's a framework some ethicists propose. Ends matter, but they must be morally justified and realistic. Means matter, avoid methods that cause disproportionate harm. Transparency and accountability. Leaders should explain their decisions and accept responsibility. This hybrid approach accepts that life is complex, but insists on boundaries. Because when everything becomes negotiable, nothing is sacred. You may never lead a revolution or govern a nation. But this question shapes everyday life. Should you lie to protect a friend? Should you cheat a little to get that promotion? Should a parent be strict to raise a disciplined child? Every decision carries a moral weight. And while outcomes are important, so is the kind of person you become while pursuing them. The ends may sometimes justify the means, but only when we keep our conscience in the driver's seat. So next time you're faced with an ethical dilemma, ask yourself, if everyone did this, would the world be better or worse? That's where the true answer lies. Thanks for watching this episode on The Unfolding Journey. If this made you think, stirred up some inner debate, or gave you a new perspective, consider joining the journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to The Unfolding Journey. We're here to explore ideas that don't fit into headlines, and your voice makes the journey better. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive.